Joining me now to discuss the administration's handling of North Korea and more, Senior Vice President for Policy and Programs at the Center for Security Policy, Fred Fleitz. Fred, what do you make of this apparent at odds between the Defense Secretary and the President?
Stuart, it's great to be here. You know, it didn't trouble me very much, and I only wish the last three presidents, Democrat and Republican, had said very clearly, we're tired of being extorted for huge cash concessions from the North Koreans every time they misbehave. I think we have to put it on the table that if there are going to be diplomatic talks, we're not going to go down that road. I think the president would support diplomatic talks, but I think he's put forward a red line, not just to other nations, but to bureaucrats in the U.S. government. He's basically saying to them, if you start diplomatic talks, we're not going to accept another agreement that amounts to appeasement.
What do you make of this test today? The U.S. successfully shot down one of our own missiles. It was a test. I guess it was an anti-missile defense system that was being tested, and it was a successful test. What do you make of that occurring right now as this tension with North Korea and missiles keeps rising?
Well, it should be noted that this test was planned for a long time, but our efforts to successfully shoot down missiles is changing the calculus for the North Koreans. And I might add, we really don't know why North Korea fired a missile over Japan instead of firing it southward, which it usually has done with launches like this. And I think one reason might be North Korea is worried. We would have interpreted a southward launch as an attack on Guam and would have shot down the missile.
Is there any way to stop their nuclear program, reverse it? Is there any way to stop their ICBM missile program and reverse it, short of military action?
I regret to say that I think military action is going to be necessary to take out North Korea's missiles. I don't think we can tolerate missiles that may land on Japan or Guam or Hawaii or the West Coast. I think that decision is coming. Concerning the nuclear program, we need far more cooperation with China. I mean, significant cutting off of economic ties with North Korea. And before that starts, I don't think we should be talking about military action against the nuclear program.
Fair point, but we keep saying don't do it again, and they do it again. They never back off. I don't think they've ever backed off thus far, which implies they're pushing and pushing and pushing, and sooner or later, you have to respond militarily. Are we close to that point?
I don't think we're close to that point. We've never put the pressure on North Korea that we wanted to. China has always resisted going as far as we wanted to, and China has cheated on the weak sanctions that were implemented. So really, there are other steps to be taken before we consider military action, and I'm hoping we're making progress with China to implement them.
With the trouble involving the 7th Fleet, are we capable of using our Aegis-class destroyers to shoot down a medium-range missile if they launched one? Can we do it?
You know, I think that's a big question. I think we can do it, but the science is still in a developmental phase. I don't think we can. We're nowhere near 100% accuracy, but the North Koreans can't be sure how accurate our efforts would be to shoot down their missiles.
We haven't got much cooperation from China yet, it seems like. What do you say?
Well, the sanctions that China recently agreed to are much stronger than it had agreed to in the past. And I think that we've been very tough with them that, you know, you cheated on the sanctions that were implemented at the end of the Obama administration, and that's why there was a huge surge in North Korea-China trade in the first quarter of 2017. Stuart, there's the funds that's funding this program. China is funding Iran's missile and nuclear programs by cheating on existing sanctions.
But you still think there's room for diplomacy before we take military action. That's your bottom line, Fred.
I think there's room for diplomacy, and there is room for far tougher sanctions before we consider military action.
Got it. Fred Fleitz, thanks for joining us, sir. We appreciate it.
Good to be here.
Yes, sir.